All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Chris Heller, President of Movoto. We're just getting started. We have people coming in. What's weird is it looked like we had like 50 some people in here, and then we hit start and it went back to zero. So hopefully we didn't cut off a bunch of people,
They're
and
coming in. I see them.
they will join us
I
back.
think the number dips down as folks move out of the waiting room, so we'll see it pop back up, Chris.
Okay. All right. Hey, while we're waiting to get started, we're gonna have a great session today, and a timely one at that. But let us know where you're joining us from. I will put in where I am at today. All right, we get the alphabet of locations. One of the great things about our network is we have members in every nook and cranny of this country. So I always see cities pop up that I've never heard of before, which is always surprising given how long I've been on this planet and lived in this country. All right, we'll start to kick it off. So again, if you just joined, this is Chris Heller. This is our monthly masterclass. I'm the president of Movoto. We do these for one reason, to provide value and to give value to all of you. For those of you that are on our platform, we appreciate your partnership and we appreciate being in business with you. For those of you that aren't, this is not about that. So you can learn about us afterwards or contact any of us directly on social media or by email. We're happy to share with you what we do. The session today is great. Oftentimes when we have a master class, it's someone that I've known sometimes for a long time, sometimes not. Today we have Brandon Green, who I've known for a long time and have a lot of respect for and a lot of affinity for. Brandon is a successful entrepreneur. He's part of the Keller Williams system, built a huge business in the Washington, D.C. based. And gosh, I'm not sure how long ago, Brandon, you can let us know, but a few years ago, you started on a new mission, and a mission to help agents and people with their finances, with their wealth building, and created the Alchemy of Money, which I'm a big fan of and love what you do. So
Thank you.
with that, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can share what you're going to share with us that's going to help us all end up with more money or make more money next year.
Oh, I like that. Let's end up with some more money and definitely make some more money next year. Chris, thank you for having me. I love this topic. And admittedly, I didn't always love the topic of finances. I've always loved the topic of money, I will tell you. But as I started my career, I started in real estate in 2001, and I had this experience, which I know a lot of people can relate to, which is I was selling a lot of houses and felt to some degree that I could just sell another house and it all would work out for me financially. And I got 3 years down the road after selling 10 million, 20 million, and then 30 million in real estate. And I had this like inclination that I think I need to file taxes. So, come to find out, my enthusiasm about how easy the business was because I hadn't paid any taxes. And when I started to dive into it, I was like, oh, wow. Like, there is production success, there's sales success, but then there's business and financial success, and those are different things. And that sent me down a rabbit hole for a number of years to try to figure out how to manage that. I was born in Wyoming, grew up in Iowa. I did not go to college, so I did not come to the business with a financial background. I've really learned it all the hard way. And today in our presentation, I'll talk about some of those ups and downs. But today really, Chris, is about a financial checklist that I have developed over the years that we talk a lot about here at Alchemy, which we started 2 years ago to help agents with their bookkeeping and their taxes. But we know bookkeeping and taxes sits in the context of a broader financial conversation. So today we're going to have that broader financial conversation of the things that I do and I advise people to do at the end of the year, right about October, November, financially to make sure that you're starting the year off powerfully in January 2025, and that anything that might be a hanging chat or loose end here in 2024, you're able to get off your checklist. So I'm not, Chris, going to share anything like that probably you haven't heard before. Like, I'm not going to tell you you should pay your taxes on time. You already know that. I'm not going to tell you you should get a profit and loss statement, like, or read one. You already know that. But what I'm hoping to do is organize the information in such a way that it is actionable and digestible, so that you, as a listener, whether you're driving down the road right now, on your way to a showing, or you're positioned in front of your computer, or you're watching this on a replay, you can say, yes, I've done that. No, I haven't. I need to get on that. And my biggest goal, and then I'll get into the content here, is to make sure that everybody comes away today with 2, at most 3 things that you're going to tackle between now and the end of the year from this financial checklist, so that you are starting 2025 in a super powerful way. So, all right, let's dive in. By the way, if you do have questions in chat, one of the privileges of joining live is please put that information in chat, and I will be watching that, as well as Jenna, and we'll see if we can get to as many questions as possible in this session today. All right, so as Chris said, I'm Brandon Green, and I'm in Washington, D.C., and I'm the CEO of Alchemy of Money. And we help agents with bookkeeping and taxes throughout the country. And this end of the year financial checklist came from a lot of learning that we have had, and that I have personally had throughout my career. And it is organized in the following sections. So section 1, we're going to be talking about planning and wealth building. Now, look, there's a lot of content around wealth building. A lot of it is inspirational, which is awesome. I love to be inspired. I read books all the time and go to seminars, but this is actionable. So this is about planning and wealth building and steps you need to take. That's section 1. Section 2 is about financial management, and we'll dive into that. And section 3 is taxes. Taxes, you all need that. So we're not going to belabor the point, but I want to cover a few things that is part of the end of the year financial checklist that have to do with taxes. And then we're going to talk about risk management, which is really on my mind right now. We had a fire, Chris knows this, Jenna, we were talking about it, in my personal residence in March, and we're fine. We got out. We're in the process of rebuilding, but it really gave me a new appreciation for risk management. And as an entrepreneur, like a lot of you, I see the positive opportunistic side of everything. Everything's an opportunity, right? And I don't often spend the time necessary to think about the downside. But the truth is, as people build their wealth, it's often the downside that materializes, that sets them back so far, and they can't claw their way back onto their trajectory. So we'll talk a little bit about risk management, a few pointers there, and then we'll hit some education. So, all right, let's get in. I see people from all over the country. Post in chat, by the way, if you would, if you've got any expectations, things you're hoping I cover today. I'll see if I can weave them in as we get through the content. So if you've got something, just let us know, and we'll get into it. All right. So wealth building planning. So I think the way to think about this material and to digest it today is literally a yes, I've done it, or not yet. So just verbally make this little list in your mind. Yes, I've done it, not yet, or maybe it's in progress, and we'll see where you end up at the end. So the first thing I have is, have you completed a net worth statement? So I had a really good mentor early on in my career who said, look, I'm really impressed with the income that you're generating. I, at that time, was flipping a lot of houses, and I know a lot of you probably flip houses too. And he's like, this is amazing. You're like generating $750,000 a year in flipping houses. And I'm like, yeah, feeling pretty good about that, right? And he goes, so how much are you keeping? And I was like, he goes, look, you need to understand that there is a huge difference between income and net worth. And the true game is net worth. And I realized in that moment, I was measuring everything, production, units, volume, and so forth, but I wasn't really measuring my net worth. And that really changed how I was thinking about winning. And financially now, I think about winning as my net worth. And let me just show, I'm going to stop share screen for a minute. I want to show you for a minute, what does a net worth statement, a really good one, look like? And by the way, this is sort of bonus early in the program here. I'm going to be showing you a variety of resources that you can find by going to our website, alchemyofmoney.co/resources. Maybe Jenna will post that there in the chat. But a great net worth statement, for those of you who can see this, is capturing all the things that you've got going on. And in our format, we have delineated out the difference between your soft assets, which would be your business, cash and securities, hard assets such as real estate, personal property, and any unsecured debt you have. And this handy dandy little spreadsheet just does all the math for you, and it does a nice little roll up for you to show you how are you doing with your net worth across these assets. What we tend to find for people who do this is they're heavy on real estate. Hey, I'm a real estate guy, born and bred, like all the way through. And I've learned over time diversification is good. So my question for you to just ponder is, if you what is your net worth, A, and then B, how is it broken up into these different areas that are driving your overall wealth, from any asset value your business may have to, cash, securities, equities, and so forth, to real estate. And then have you accounted for a little bit of personal property? It's probably not going to, your boat, your car, probably not going to be a huge part of your net worth, but put it on there. And what about unsecured debt? And then I really like, and then we'll go to the next one, this little section down here says capital invested goal versus capital invested actual, and what the gap is. Because if you're really serious about driving your net worth forward, then you need to add to it by making investments. And wouldn't it be neat if you had a goal about how much capital you're going to invest over the course of the year, and you are actually tracking that? So just a quick little visual on what a really great net worth statement looks like. All right. So yes or no, you got it working on. Number 2 is, have you put in your calendar a 6-month reminder to update that statement? So I think updating it every 6 months is a really good cadence. It's certainly not something that generally moves on a monthly basis, but every 6 months is good. Number 3 is, have you completed your 5-year possibility plan? Let me give you a little context on this. One of the things that I noticed as I was growing my production business was that the skills that I needed to grow my production business, which were thinking fast, rapid response, fast decision-making on it, were entirely different than the skills that I needed to grow wealth, which were analytical, slower, risk-oriented. And when you zoom out your perspective by about 5 years, you can start to see that how you do business planning for your actual sales business or brokerage or team is different than how you do wealth building planning. So your 5-year possibility plan is a 5-year plan that is designed to help you advance forward your goals financially in a 5-year time frame. I like 5 years because you can really make a big difference in 5 years. And then, have you actually incorporated that plan into your 12-month business plan? And is that document up to date? I mean, I think this year has been a hustle. And, well, I don't know, every year is probably a bit of a hustle, but this year feels like it's been a strong hustle. And so, are you taking the time this fall to do a little bit of planning and put in your calendar some of these key dates to make sure that you have the time allocated to do this? All right, skipping through a few of these, I want to just highlight the best ones. Do you have a written personal financial plan in place that is no more than 5 years old? So let me show you what this looks like. So a written personal financial plan would be created by a certified financial planner. And it would look at the totality of everything you've got going on financially. And it would look a little bit like this. It probably would not include much about real estate, although some financial planners will. It'll be multiple pages long. That'll give you a grounded look of where your wealth actually stands today and what your cash flow looks like based on your different assets, what the gap is based on your lifestyle. Like, this is extremely valuable. one of the classes that I teach here as a part of Alchemy is Alchemy and Money Live. It's an all-day financial class. And I always start the class off by asking people to define very specifically what wealthy means to them. And people will go through a little exercise and we'll come up with some answers. And then I'll say, put a number around it. And it often falls flat there because we realize our articulation about wealth tends to sit in this very generalized, 30,000 feet emotional place and isn't grounded in any kind of plan or any sort of numbers. A written financial plan will help you develop the specifics that you need in order to actually advance it. And then, down here at the bottom, do you know where it is and have you actually read it? So I'm going to take a little bit of a breath here to give you a chance to post any questions that you've got, if you've got any so far. So Chris, I know that you do a lot of coaching with agents on this. Do you see that what is your thought? Do you think this is where sometimes things are not connecting, and that is people have great ideas and are really inspired, but there's no planning?
Not only is there no planning, there tends to be a just an avoidance of these things and these topics. One of the frustrations for me all along has been that I see agents help people build and create wealth every day in what they do. And I don't see them doing it for themselves at the level that they could or should do.
Yes. So, and I like documents to be the grounded thing that advances our goals. So if I were to just summarize this, and we'll move on to the next slide, net worth statement is a document that documents your progress or lack thereof. A written financial plan is designed to help guide you around your decisions to close the gap between where you are now and where you want to be, which assumes you've defined where you are now, net worth statement, to where you want to be, what your goals, hopes, and ambitions are, and how much it's going to actually cost for you to drive that. So that's a really big component here to planning and wealth building. Finally, I'll add here, do you have a written estate plan in place that's no more than 5 years old? The estate plan that is usually requiring you to generate a trust is a process with a local attorney that can really help you think a lot about things maybe you don't think about on a day-to-day basis around your assets, and that can really help lock things into place for you. All right, let's move on. Okay, so now let's get a few more of these tactics, right? One, are you receiving a business-focused P&L and balance sheet for your business? Yes or no? Do you read it? Yes or no, right? That may be a slightly different question than are you receiving it? Do you know exactly where you can actually find it? And have you blocked an hour a month to review and ask questions about your finances? So one thing that I've noticed that creates a lot of overwhelm in the financial space is people are just like, I've got so much that I've got to get done. How can I possibly allocate any more time to this? And I think I get it. I've got a ton going on. We all do. But actually, the amount of time you need to dedicate to your finances is about an hour a month. And you can do that once a year, or you can do it once a month. And if you do it once a year, I don't know, you have to add a little bit of an extra on there because you forgot like what happened 6 months ago. But an hour a month, you've got an hour a month. Well, let's be real. Like you've got an hour a month to actually do this. Is that in your calendar? Extra credit? Do you have a financial coach who's holding you accountable and showing up with you during a defined appointment? Do you have a business budget in place? Now, remember, I told you at the beginning, I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff at you, checklist format. So as I'm going through it, just ask yourself, do I have it? Do I not? Do I have it? Do I not? Do a little bit of housekeeping today, just like your fall checklist for the properties that you send out to your clients, like change the air filters, make sure you're clearing the gutters. Like this is the same idea here. So you don't have to do it all, but where are you in this context? Do you have a business budget? Do you have a personal budget? Do you have 3 months of cash reserves for your business or for your personal life? So I told the story early that I started my career behind with taxes. And when I got the tax bill, it was obviously very painful. And I realized I did not have enough cash set aside to deal with that. So I had to sell a rental property in order to pay that tax bill. And I learned then, and it's a lesson that I think is apropos for all of us, is you've got to have enough cash available to handle any downside risks that might happen that you can at least think of. You can't accommodate for everything, of course, but we know there is some magic in having 3 months of cash in the business and in your personal life that helps prevent you from having to sell assets at inopportune times when you need the cash. Do you have a separate account for those assets? Let me just give you a really interesting visual on a separate account concept. So at Alchemy, as we're helping people like structure their finances, one thing that we find is people have sometimes way too many bank accounts. So a really clean, clear way of thinking about it is you've got a business banking, checking and savings, and a personal checking and savings per each entity that you're actually running. And then this particular account is a magic account. Once you have enough cash, 3 months reserves in personal and business, you can open up a brokerage account, which is where you can store cash until it's time to make a key investment. So this sort of idea that bank account configuration is important. It's important because money grows when you put structure around it and you begin to measure it. So think about how your business and personal life accounts and credit accounts and investment accounts are structured. It will either help or hinder your tracking. And we know that if you're good with tracking, what you track tends to expand, and then things can really move on from there. Speaking of investing, we know that it's great to contribute about 3 times a year. So, how'd you do this year in 2024? Did you make 3 contributions to investments this year? If not, no judgment, it's perfectly fine. But just think next year, can you even populate into your calendar now, putting into some dates where you're actually meeting with your financial team and assessing whether or not it's time to actually put some dollars in some investing? Okay. All right, great. Let's move on to section number 2, which is taxes. I wanted to highlight 2 important points on taxes I think are worthy of a little bit double click. The first one is, have you put some semi-annual appointments in your calendar with your CPA? So at Alchemy, we do taxes, and we can see there is a huge difference in the people that are effective in managing their taxes and those that are not. And that is whether or not they've proactively set up some appointments with their CPA. Now, look, it may not be your favorite appointment in the world, but hey, think about it. Like, getting ahead on taxes frees up more capital for you to do more fun stuff with it. And if there was one thing I said would make a huge difference for you, it would be getting a proactive meeting on place. And that meeting, for most of you on this call, should be about looking at your written tax plan. Oh, wait, what? Right. So, do you have a written tax plan in place? Or are you relying on tips and tricks and classes and a little bit of research on Google to manage an extremely complex area? So, let me just put a little visual for you on what a written tax plan actually looks like. So, the tax code is extremely extensive and complicated, and a really good written tax plan looks like this right here. It's a careful review of all the stuff that you might actually qualify for tax-wise. Just dozens and dozens of potential tax strategies. You can see as I'm scrolling, if you can see on visually, like some of this stuff you've heard about in classes or what have you, but all of it has to be contextualized with your individual situation and put into an actual plan. And a plan, just to give you another visual on what a plan looks like so you can see if you really have one, looks like something like this, where all that stuff comes together and says, okay, Chris, based on your situation and your opportunities, there are $85,000 in tax savings available to you. And then you go item by item and decide whether you should or should not actually deploy these strategies. So if you're having trouble with taxes, it could very well be you don't actually have a written plan. Well, back to a common theme I think we have here today to help guide you on what is actually going on in your tax world. So this is a big one. Not everybody needs a tax plan, but if you're making more than a couple $100,000 a year and you have some real assets, you've got some real estate, it's quite possible that you really should use a tax plan. And this could be something that, could be a complete game changer for you to actually have that written down and ready to go. All right, great. Next one, have you marked your calendar with the various tax dates throughout the year? Look, this is an administrative exercise, but really important. The way I do it is I take the tax deadline and I mark my calendar 1 month prior to make sure that I've got enough time to gather the cash or whatever I need to do in order to make sure I get all that stuff done and paid before the tax deadline. All right. Lots more in taxes, but we wanted to cover sort of a round robin circle. So where have we been so far? We started with just sort of a general financial checklist, like how are you doing around your wealth building planning, net worth statement, estate plan, budgets. Are you monitoring a P&L, a budget, like the nuts and bolts of being in business and advancing your wealth. And then we went into taxes and said, look, there are a couple key things that you must do. One, you got to be proactive in your meetings with your CPA. And two, you've got to have a written tax plan for most people if you're ever really going to get ahead of that. All right, great. Let's go into a couple more. All right, now we're on the risk management side. So there are a few things that we see people are either doing or not doing that makes a huge difference in, when they may really fall back. So, I think we've had some recent examples here in the country of like stuff happens, whether it's hurricanes or floods, like, stuff that's outside of our control. And most of this is really can whack us back. And we know that we're also in a pretty litigious, high risk industry. And so some of this stuff can also protect us from, our clients out there or would-be clients. So the first one is, are you doing business in the name of a legal entity? Many of you are. Just this morning, we had a member with Alchemy call me up because she realized that while she formed an LLC 5 years ago, she had not paid the annual fee and filled out the annual form to keep the entity in good standing. And so the entity was no longer available to her, and regrettably, she has a potential legal issue. So she's in a little bit of a pickle. She may not have the protection of her legal entity just because she forgot to fill out that annual form and pay that annual fee. So are you doing business in the name of a legal entity, and are you keeping it up in good standing? That's a real big deal. Super simple administratively, but if you fall out of the good graces with the state because you didn't pay the fee and you didn't fill out the form, then you could potentially not have that legal entity to fall back on in the event of litigation. So just ask yourself, where are you on that? Do you even know if your entity is in good standing with the state in which you filed? If not, that could be a really, really good housekeeping item for you. Another one is, are you having regular shareholder, I put in air quotes because you're probably the shareholder, meeting and documenting the corporate minute books? Literally last week, I got an email from the paralegal at the firm that I use who's like, hey, do you want me to create the minute book for this one entity that he's managing? And I said, yes. He said, well, what has happened over the next year that's worthy of the minute book? And I said, nothing. But we both know that the process of creating the minute book is way in the weeds administratively, but is critical to protecting you at a high level when things actually happen. So it's back to, if you've got an entity, you've got a little bit of good housekeeping that's really important, both on the legal side and also on the tax side. So I know one thing that a lot of people have are S corporations. So I'll bet you a bunch of people here on this chat have S corporations. Well, what you may not realize is there are a few compliance things you've got to do in order to keep your S corporation in good standing, or you could lose that classification. One of them is paying yourself via payroll and doing it on a frequent basis. So the truth is, the bigger we get, the more successful we get financially, the more complexity and administration that we have in our world, and we've got to find someone to help us with that. It's really fairly impossible to do on your own, I think, and stay successful in real estate. It's really critical to get a great team around you. Speaking of, are you meeting with your business attorney annually? Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Oh, Brandon, there was the question that before we went too far, about a a written tax plan. And like, could
Yes.
you go into a little more detail on what that might look like?
Yeah, so a written tax plan is a detailed process where a CPA, right, is going to look at all the possible things that you could qualify for. And, just to share here again, like look at all these, just so many different things you could possibly qualify for tax wise. But the question is, do you and should you even deploy that? All of that information then is populated into software, and the software will say, okay, yes, these are the things you can take advantage of. And let me pull that up. And these are the things that you do not qualify for. But the software itself isn't enough, because good tax planning is both an art and a science. So let me give you an example. Many of you probably have kids, but whether you should hire your kids for your business and take a tax deduction depends a lot on what they're doing for you, how old they are, or maybe you should do cost segregation, or maybe you shouldn't with your rental properties. Cost segregation will pull all the tax benefits forward to the present. But if you're planning to keep that property for 15 years, you may not want to do cost segregation. So, Chris, a good tax plan will look at the extensive nature of all of your options and then say, these are the ones you could take advantage of. And then a good tax planner, like we have here at Alchemy, will say, well, let's weigh the pros and cons. I mean, with tax, it's always you either get it or you get this or you get that. Like it's always this trade-off. And a written
Yeah,
tax plan will help you see that.
yeah, and I think the takeaway there is, look, most people have an accountant or have someone who does their taxes. But filing taxes and tax planning and these type of things are two different things. Yes, they can be done by the same person, and if you have a good person, should be done by the same person. But are we really just doing the minimum to file our taxes, or are we really, employing an expert to help us
Yes.
plan and maximize our benefits?
Most of the time, people are doing tax compliance work, meaning people, you're filling out the forms and that's it. And the IRS is happy with that. They're very happy with you paying the most possible. But if you want to not pay the most possible, then it does require a more sophisticated resource and a different exercise around planning that is really important. You know, as I was going about my career, I ended up getting audited twice. And it was a relatively painful experience, in all honesty. And I realized as the auditor was sitting at my desk in my home office, looking at my files, asking me difficult questions about my travel expenses that I had deducted all of them. I realized in that moment that the team I had around me around bookkeeping and taxes, while good when I started, wasn't good anymore. And I needed to really upgrade what I was doing. I also realized I needed to upgrade myself and my mindset around this work. But it's sort of like, I think for agents, if you look at your team of home inspectors, title attorneys, lenders, you have spent a great deal of time curating the best of the best for your clients. But we don't often do that for ourselves, for our financial team. We just take kind of with the old resource or somebody who doesn't call us back. But we know that that isn't sufficient when you get to the level of production and wealth that many people are on this call today. So
There's one more question too, and I think it's a simple answer, but it says, I have an S corp and I do pay myself. Do I have an annual fee also?
So it's a really good question, Laura. Thank you for posting that. So uh, you the annual fee would have to do with your LLC with the state in which you registered it. Some states do charge an annual fee to keep the LLC in good standing. Some do not. So look to see where you were registered and what do you need to do to keep that entity in good standing. Probably have to at least file a form every couple of years, and highly likely you have some sort of fee that you need to pay to do it. And
Yeah.
that's whether you're an S corp or an LLC without an S corp. It's any legal entity you have. The state probably has some criteria that you have to maintain.
Yeah.
So if I may, let me just take a minute on S corps. Like S corporations are fabulous for building your wealth by reducing your taxes if you've got income of more than a couple $100,000 a year. If it's less, then they become overly arduous with a bunch of stuff you've got to do, and it costs you a lot of money. And importantly, do not hold real estate in S corporations. Unfortunately, we've had some members come on board that were doing their taxes and they got bad advice and they put a bunch of real estate in S corporations, and they're very unhappy with their tax bill now that they've come to sell them. So S corps are great, but it does require some extra counsel to make sure that you're not inadvertently getting yourself in trouble with the S corporation. All right, this next one here is, have you scheduled an annual insurance audit to review your insurance, general liability, property casualty, cyber, disability, and life? So I mentioned early in the call that we had a fire in March, and it ended up being an electrical fire in the wall in our principal bedroom. I was asleep, 2 o'clock in the morning, woke up, smoke, and the wall was on fire. Very dramatic. We got out, we're fine. Um, and what I realized was the cost of displacement for me and my family was so high. Like moving us out and moving us into an apartment, extremely expensive. And we'll be in an apartment for like a year and a half. Um, and it's a whole separate policy or a section of the policy, displacement costs. So I've been in a habit of reviewing my insurance with my agent on an annual basis to just adjust for changes in my world, adjust for property values up and down, to rebid the insurance package. So, we're actually in pretty good shape, but I'm realizing that a lot of times people who have trouble with insurance aren't actually reviewing it every year and aren't actually thinking about the different components to a loss, one of which is displacement costs. So a good challenge for anybody right now is to go back to their insurance carrier and see if you've got any and what your displacement costs coverage looks like. I mean, look, we'll have $500,000 in displacement costs in just a handful of months. Like, it's insane how expensive that is. I think the other area of insurance that is important to think about is, I was the broker of our office for a number of years, and I had an agent who got an incredible listing in Georgetown. And if you've ever been to DC, you know Georgetown is a really nice place. And she had a sign call come in one afternoon. She had a coming soon sign on the property. And this gentleman calls and says, "Hey, I want you to show me the property." And she did what any good listing agent would do. She said, "Oh, sir, do you have an agent?" Right? No, 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 no. Well, could you come to the open house? No, no, no. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the seller to show me the property. She's like, "Oh, okay. Well, there we go." So she went and showed him the property. Now, as they entered the property, she said, "Sir, just be careful, because the the stair railing. Okay, we still have a little work to do on it before the open house tomorrow. So a little, careful. Don't worry about it," he says, and he goes up the stairs. She goes to the kitchen for a minute, and then she hears thud, 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 thud. She comes out. She sees this gentleman sprawled out all over the beautifully refinished oak hardwood floors. "Are you okay? Is there anything I can do?" And he's like, "Oh, no, no, I'm fine." And he like hobbles his way out. So she calls me and she goes, "I had an incident." I was like, "Yeah, sounds like it. Haven't been able to reach him." So, long story short, nobody could reach him for weeks, months. 1 year and 10 months go by. 2 months before the statute of limitations, in comes a lawsuit. Her, the brokerage, the seller, for a big slip and fall case. Now, this is actually a good news story. So this agent had a general liability policy on her business. And that liability policy kicked in. It litigated for 3.5 years. And then the insurance company ended up settling for a large sum. That agent is still in business today. She had a $1,000 deductible. So in this context of risk management, my question for you as you're listening is, do you have a general liability policy on your, most personal umbrella policies will not cover this, by the way, because you're doing business out there. You should talk to your insurance company just to see. Very few brokerages, insurance policies cover this kind of thing. This is not E&O, right? This is you out and about having an incident with the public. It's possible that you need a general liability policy as something to really protect you when you're out and about. So I have, similar to that, a not so good story of an agent who had a super similar situation and regrettably did not have the policy. He ended up declaring bankruptcy and he's no longer in the business. So this sort of, have you scheduled an annual insurance audit to review your general liability policy or get one, your property and casualty? I also had a car accident last fall, so I've just been using the heck out of my insurance over the last year. Never had these incidents before. Cyber disability can be a really critical component to managing your wealth. All right, a couple more sections and then we'll review. So education. Look, we don't get a lot of exposure to the nuts and bolts of this out there in the field. We're learning about lead gen, buyers, presentation, sellers, building a team, and so forth. So what are you doing to put your financial hat on? Are you meeting at least 3 times a year with a financial coach and a mentor? Are you signing up for a financial training class at least once a year? Are you reading one at least financial improvement book? Are you listening to one financial improvement podcast, right? So what are you doing around education just to continue to expose yourself to this? There's not a lot of content that's going to bring you here naturally, and this may be an area you avoid, maybe not. So really making sure you've got this covered in your education calendar next year is critical. All right, let's backtrack and just kind of review where we've been, and then we'll open it up for questions. So we talked today about planning and wealth building, and then financial management, taxes, risk management, education. Let's just, highlight, I think, the most important things here. On planning and wealth building, I'm going to double click on the net worth statement. I don't know, Chris, anything else pop out to you on this one? What would you say is your favorite on this one?
I already have a list of things that I need to do. So I think for me, having the written financial plan in place that's no more than 5 years old, right? Like it's as you said, we get busy with our world and everything else, and often don't keep up on some of the things that are guiding us or help us get to where we want to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a handful of seminal documents that guide our world. One is a written financial plan, the other is a written estate plan, and the third is a written tax plan. If you've got that plus a written 5-year business plan of where you're going, like, that's so powerful. And so just revisiting which one of those documents needs to be created, needs to be updated, needs to be looked at again, that can really advance a lot of what you're up to. So I like that, Chris, too. On financial management, look, this whole P&L and balance sheet thing, we talk a lot about it, but can you make that 10% better in 2025 would be my question for everybody listening. Maybe that is reading it more consistently. Maybe it is going into the details and analyzing what is the data telling you. Maybe it's getting a coach to help you with it. Maybe it's taking it and building a budget from it. Like there's something that everybody can do to make your profit and loss statement 10% better. So I would highlight that one is something that's really worth doing. And that, look, that's our sweet spot here at Alchemy. If we can help you with that, we'd love to help you. So I think, Jenna, you posted in there, if you want to reach out to us, it's alchemyofmoney.co/demo is critical. So I'm gonna, that P&L and balance sheets sounds like a dry activity, but the gold is in the P&L and balance sheet. The stuff that you can learn there is really quite remarkable. Taxes, I think, Chris, you were saying it on the personal financial thing. I'd say get a tax plan. Most people listening on this call probably need a tax plan. That I think could be the game changer for a lot of people. So if you feel a little behind, a little not as proactive as you could, tax plan could be the thing you've really got to advance.
Yeah, look, I think I agree with you. I think most people on this call file their taxes. They have their accountant prepare them, they sign them, they get filed,
Yep.
and they don't know whether they've missed opportunities to reduce their tax liability or missed any strategies that could be beneficial to them this year or next.
Yeah.
And that's where that plan comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, look, if you're a 10 out of 10 on taxes, forget this one. But most of us feel like there's more that we could do. And actually, I'm just going to throw this out now for anybody who books a call with us to help you with this, as being part of this call today. If you book a call today with our team, we'll give you $100 off. Between now and the end of the year, just as a little incentive for anybody who's procrastinating, and you need a little extra kick. We're happy to do that. So the link is in the chat there. Thank you, Jenna. Risk management. Look,
What is
go ahead, Chris.
Hey, Brandon, quick question. In terms of that, whether it's your firm or another firm, there's probably people wondering, like, at what level does it make sense for me to do this? Like, what's the profile of the clients that should be engaging?
The evolution from compliance-oriented tax services, which is what most people are getting, putting numbers on forms, calling it a day, to strategic planning tax services is triggered by either more than about $250,000 a year in income and or more than 2 or 3 assets. Then you're moving in rental properties or other kinds of assets. You now have enough stuff on the board that we can play with. If you're making 100 grand a year and you don't have any rental properties, then you don't need a tax plan, right? You just need to pay your taxes on time. And that'll save you a lot of money and maximize your deductions by having good bookkeeping. But when you get into this $250,000 or more in income, 2 properties, 3 properties, or more, then there is no doubt, in absence of a plan, you're leaving money on the table. Now, I will say, look, it's likely the tax code could change next year, regardless of the administration that comes in. So getting ahead of where you are now in order to be more prepared for changes next year is an exercise that is done this year. I think one of the things that people get frustrated by is they next year want to know how they could save on their taxes from 2024. Well, so if you want to do better on your taxes in 2024, you have to have a plan in 2024. Otherwise, you're just pushing the value forward into the future. So I see one little comment here. I have my accountant and financial advisor. I hated delegating at the beginning and think that I could handle it all, but it was so worth doing. Yeah, 100%. Thank you for that little extra. Like, this work, while maybe not super sexy, is super critical to success. Then on the risk management side, I just want to go back to this annual insurance audit. It'll help catch your missing general liability policy. It will help catch that vehicle that you bought in cash and never added. It'll help catch the fact your properties have increased in value and your policy is no longer sufficient. Or here's an interesting one. I had a grand piano. One thing I missed, actually. So I had a grand piano in the house. It was destroyed. I actually had a special rider for the grand piano of $10,000, but the grand piano was worth 30. So just, so little things like that make a huge difference when you actually need to file for insurance. And all that can really be, or much of it anyway, can be picked up if you're doing an annual review. I like to do it in August, by the way. It sort of gets it out of the end of the year hustle, out of the beginning of the year. and puts it sort of in the middle of the year. And any changes you need to make take like 6 to 8 weeks to effectuate. So if you do that review in August, it gives you time to get that cleaned up.
Yeah, a lot of times, and I think that's a great strategy, Brandon. A lot of times, when we have insurance policies on homes that have been there for a number of years, uh, the replacement coverage is not going to be sufficient. Or, when we got the policy, we were trying to get the least expensive premium possible, so that, the insurance agent said, okay, here's how we do that. And, you may have saved some money in your premium, but it could be super costly, when it comes time to filing a claim if we don't have the right coverage.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it really can. Um, Candace just posted in chat a very good question, making sure you're not paying too much on financial advisory and CPA. I will tell you, anytime somebody comes to me and they think they're paying too much, it's because they're just not getting the value. They're not getting the clear delineation of the tax benefits, or their financial advisor is not helping them grow their wealth. So I think, Candace, I'd flip that question on its head a little bit and say, can you quantify the value that your financial professionals are giving to you? And that'll kind of help you see it. I'll tell you briefly, like most financial advisors are on a percentage of your portfolio fee structure of about 1.5-ish%, possibly in addition to that, an annual planning fee of a couple $1,000s. Most tax services for folks that are at the level that I think most of you are, you're going to be paying about, let's call it $4,000-ish a year per tax return for really good tax services. So if you're paying like $600 a year still, you got like your brothers, uncles, cousins, stepsons, whoever, you're getting compliance oriented tax services, but good planning oriented tax services, proactive and so forth, whether you cut Alchemy or you go elsewhere, is going to, be in the $4,000 a year sort of range. All right. And then, as we sort of wrap it up here, I think the big thing to think about is you can't do it all, and you can't do it all at once. So if people are willing, like, post in chat, what's the one thing you're going to do out of everything we said today, and bonus credit if you get 2 or 3, but what's one thing that you're actually going to do? I'm just going to post myself. I just realized as I'm going through this, I need to update my 5-year possibility plan, frankly. I need to get that sort of back up and running. I think it was like 2 years ago that I actually did my own. So I need to get that updated. So Chris, that's same for you. Get that 5-year plan in place. Stacy, check with my insurance company about the liability. Please do that. That could really be the thing that saves your butt next year in the event that you have a problem. You've got that insurance to really sit back and rely on. Heather, thank you. The net worth statement. Don't forget to go to our resources page, alchemyofmoney.co/resources. There's a lot of good stuff there for you to look at. I don't see anything yet, but tax plan, like, this is the season. Don't call your CPA in April of next year and say, hey, let's do some strategic planning. They're going to be like, no. Call us off tax season. So this is definitely the time of year to be doing any tax planning that you've got. All right. Well, hey, Chris, we covered a lot of ground
We did cover a lot of ground. This was
Yes.
great. It's like, there's my mentor used to say there's 2 things agents never want to hear about. Anything to do with health and fitness, and anything to do with finances.
Yes.
And those are the 2 things that could impact us the most. All right.
It
So
really can, yes.
yeah, so you took a topic that isn't always the most popular one and made it very informative and helpful, and caused all of us to give thought to the things we need to be doing besides lead generation and lead follow-up.
Yeah, I mean, of course we need to do that, but it all needs to sit in context. And I think even Heather just now posted a good comment. She's been in the business for 3 years. Is it worth figuring out what other tax breaks I'm missing? The answer is yeah. If nothing else, it's going to be a learning exercise for you. Are you too early to have a sophisticated tax plan? I don't know, maybe. But at minimum, a conversation with your CPA, or come talk to us, like, see what's going on. I remember when I finally decided that my financial resources needed to also be great coaches for me, and I communicated that to them, the game really changed. And I realized that while I can delegate out this work, I cannot delegate out the understanding of what's going on and expect that my big ambitions would be achieved. So we're good about thinking big in this business. We've got to think about how do we execute small? How do we take full responsibility for everything that's going on in our world over time, not all in 1 year, and make it a lifelong journey. And as we know, a lot of very wise people say, don't underestimate what you can accomplish in 5 years. It's really quite remarkable. And there's power in creating that plan in that time frame. And you'll be surprised when you look back on it, just how much progress you can make.
Yeah.
So thank you, Chris, for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to dialogue with everybody today.
Yeah, Brandon, thank you. We appreciate what you do. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope you got as much value as I hope you got as much value as I did. During this call, I verified with my bookkeeper that I do have my general liability insurance besides my umbrella policy, so I'm good.
Good.
So anyways, thank you everyone. We hope you have a productive week and we will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.